I never imagined that a single moment could turn my entire life inside out. But as I lay motionless in that hospital bed, staring at the stark white ceiling, I realized my life was no longer my own. The accident that had shattered my body also shattered the carefully constructed image I had of myself. I was Harold Jenkins, the strong and unyielding police officer, the provider, the man who had built his life on discipline and control. But now, immobilized and broken, I was forced to confront the fragility of it all. The days in the hospital were agonizing, not just because of the pain, but because of the silence. My body was confined to the bed, but it was my soul that felt truly imprisoned. Nights were the worst. The mechanical hum of machines was the only sound, and in that silence, my mind became a battleground. Memories, regrets, and fears I had buried for decades rose to the surface, relentless in their pursuit. Then it happened. It was a night like any other, or so I thought. The nurse had dimmed the lights, and I had drifted into a restless sleep. Suddenly, I found myself floating. At first, I thought I was dreaming. My body lay still on the hospital bed below me, but I was rising, weightless and free. The pain was gone, but so was the comfort of familiarity. I was being drawn upward, into a space that was neither light nor dark, neither warm nor cold. It was simply empty. As I floated, a sudden force yanked me downward. The emptiness was replaced by suffocating darkness. I was falling, faster and faster, into an abyss that seemed to have no end. A cold dread crept over me as faint whispers began to surround me. At first, they were indistinct, a murmur of voices too low to understand. But as I descended deeper, the whispers grew louder, more urgent, more agonized. They called my name, accusing, begging, taunting. Then I landed, not with a crash, but with a crushing weight that pressed down on me. The darkness was absolute, but it was alive, pulsing with an oppressive energy that seemed to seep into my very soul. Around me, shapes began to emerge, shadowy figures writhing and twisting in endless torment. Their faces were contorted with pain, their mouths open in silent screams. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. It was as if an unseen force held my gaze, forcing me to witness their suffering. One figure stood out, a man, his hands clutching at a pile of glowing objects that burned him with every touch. Gold coins spilled through his fingers, each one searing his flesh. But he refused to let go. His face was a mask of greed and desperation, and I knew, without being told, that he had spent his life chasing wealth at the expense of everything else. Another figure appeared, a woman staring into a mirror. She clawed at her reflection, desperate to escape. But the mirror held her captive, forcing her to relive her vanity and superficial pursuits. I wanted to run, to escape this place, but there was no way out. The ground beneath me felt alive, pulsating with heat and despair. The air was thick, making it hard to breathe. I began to feel my own regrets weighing on me, each one like a chain pulling me deeper into the abyss. The memory of the man I arrested without compassion came flooding back. His pleading eyes haunted me, and for the first time, I questioned whether my duty had blinded me to his humanity. A voice shattered the oppressive silence. "Harold," it said, calm yet commanding. I turned to see a figure clothed in radiant white, a stark contrast to the darkness around us. The light emanating from them was not just bright. It was alive, penetrating every corner of my soul. I couldn't see their face, but their presence was undeniable. I felt exposed, as though they could see every hidden part of me. Yet there was no judgment, only understanding. "You know why you are here," the figure said. It wasn't a question, it was a statement. I nodded, tears streaming down my face. "I have carried so much," I whispered. "Pride, anger, guilt. I don't know how to let it go." The figure extended a hand, and suddenly, a massive mirror appeared before me. Its surface was not glass but something alive, shimmering and shifting. "Look," the figure commanded. Reluctantly, I stepped closer. What I saw left me breathless. The reflection wasn't just me. It was every version of myself I had tried to hide. The hardened officer, too proud to show compassion. The distant father, too focused on work to see his children's needs. The man driven by control and ambition, unable to admit his own fears. Each version stared back at me, their eyes accusing but also pleading. "This is who you have been," the figure said, their voice firm but gentle. "But it is not who you have to be." I fell to my knees, overwhelmed by the weight of my failures. "What can I do?" I sobbed. "How can I fix this?" "You cannot change the past," the figure replied, "but you can choose to move forward. Redemption is not found in perfection, but in surrender." The word struck something deep within me. Surrender, a concept I had resisted my entire life. To surrender was to admit weakness, to let go of control. But now, in this place, I realized it was the only way. "I surrender," I whispered, then louder, "I surrender." The chains around me began to dissolve, and the weight on my chest lifted. The figure reached out and touched my shoulder, and suddenly, the darkness began to fade. Light surrounded me, warm and enveloping, pulling me upward. When I opened my eyes, I was back in the hospital bed. The pain in my body was still there, but it felt distant, almost insignificant. My wife was sitting beside me, her hand clasping mine. "You're awake," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Thank God." I smiled weakly, a sense of peace washing over me. "Thank God," I echoed. That day marked the beginning of a new chapter in my life. The accident had broken my body, but it had also broken open my soul, allowing light to pour in. I knew I had been given a second chance, not just to live, but to truly live, to be present, to love, to let go of the burdens that had weighed me down for so long. And now, I share this story with you, not to frighten or shame, but to remind you that no matter how far you have strayed, no matter how heavy your burdens, there is always a way back. All it takes is a single step, a step toward surrender, toward grace, toward the light that is always waiting.